the Battlefield series has led us through several theaters of war. From the far past to the distant future, the latest entry in the famous war simulation series is bringing it back to where it all began, World War II. Hi, I'm Alpha Lancer, the Leaderboard, and I hope you have your loadout all ready to go, because we've got 107 facts about Battlefield 5.
Battlefield 5 was first revealed on May 23, 2018. Battlefield developer DICE didn't wait for a big convention like E3 to roll around before showing their new game off. Instead, they opted to have a live stream directly from the team of developers themselves explaining the new entry. The live reveal was hosted by Trevor Noah, current host of The Daily Show, and highlighted some of the key features the team has planned, like modes, weapons, and vehicles, to name a few. Battlefield 5 will be using World War II as the setting this time around, which is the same war that the very first Battlefield game from 16 years ago took place in. The War Stories mode, made popular by Battlefield 1, will return. War Stories was a series of smaller stories following different people through the war instead of the more traditional single protagonist campaign. The first character players learned of from the reveal was part of the Nordlyse War story, a young female member of the Norwegian resistance fighters who was trying to rescue her family from an unknown threat. DICE also announced a new mode called Combined Arms, a new co-op mode for up to 4 players. The most unique feature of this mode is the mission generator that randomizes how the mode will play out. Unfortunately, Combined Arms is going to be one of the modes not initially available when the game releases, but with the random nature of this mode, it's understandable that they'd need some time to make sure all the kinks are worked out. The Operations mode makes a return, but in a big way. Now called Grand Operations, this game type takes 64 players across multiple maps and multiple modes, with the outcomes of each skirmish affecting the next one. For example, a team might be going into a round with fewer reinforcements and vehicles than they'd like, depending on the outcome of the previous match. Grand Operations is split up into 3 battles taking place over 3 in-game days. The first day starts with the attacking team parachuting into the defending team's base. The first thing they'll want to do is take down the 4 artillery cannons, as doing this will make the next day easier for your team. The second day is a more traditional capture point based battle, with a sequential order of points to contest leading into the enemy's base. If things are tight and a victor isn't declared by the end of the third day, it'll go to a dramatic extra day for a last stand. If it goes to that 4th day, both teams lose the ability to respawn, meaning no second chances. Also, your ammo will be depleted based on the outcome from previous days. The only way to win is wiping out the other team. A new concept for Battlefield this time around is the Company. It's basically your collection of soldiers that you can level up, customize, and then bring into the multiplayer modes of the game. You'll be able to have 1 company per faction, with British and German being the first 2 factions available at launch. And within each faction, your soldier class options are Medic, Scout, Support, and Assault. You can customize your soldiers in a variety of ways, from weapon loadouts, outfits, and genders, and even the paints they wear. This level of customization also applies to your vehicles, aside from the whole gender thing, but as you play the game and level up your company of soldiers, you'll unlock new combat roles you can apply to them. This allows you to further specialize your soldiers by the way that you like to play. Each character will get 2 combat roles by default, with more unlocked as they continue to play through multiplayer. Listening to fan feedback, DICE hasn't put a price tag on any gameplay mechanics, meaning all maps, weapons, and modes will be available to anyone buying the game itself. There will still be cosmetics available for sale, but don't sweat it, they won't have stat-altering abilities or anything like that. DICE wanted to try and make this Battlefield game feel more grounded than was in the past by attempting to make the more video gamey parts of the game work more like they do in real life. For example, instead of just magically using medpacks and picking up ammo by walking over them, you have to actually pick them up and use them in a more manual process. DICE is also making resources more scarce in the game, so you better make sure your base is well stocked. Players will have the ability to build around their base with barbed wire, sandbags, and foxholes to help fortify it. The support class even comes equipped with a toolbox specifically to help with fortifying, offering faster build times and additional fortifications. Developers said that the release date is just the beginning for the game, and that more features like maps and weapons will be released as time goes on. The updates will be released in chronological order, meaning the weaponry will become more advanced as time goes on, like in actual war. The update schedule is being referred to as the Tides of War. Along with new maps and weapons, there will also be limited time events taking place, similar to events in something like Destiny or World of Warcraft. If you're able to complete these events in the allowed time, you'll be rewarded with new skins, vehicles, weapons, and emblems to deck out your company. Each event will take you through different theaters of World War II. This will in turn unlock new content along the way. There will be several chapters of DLC released for Battlefield 5 throughout the first year of the game's release. DICE announced that a Battle Royale mode type would be coming to Battlefield 5. In this new mode called Firestorm, 16 squads of 4 will battle against each other in an ever-shifting map to see who is the last team standing. Just in case you didn't know what a Battle Royale mode was. Even though this is a Battle Royale inspired mode, it's still going to play like a Battlefield game, but reimagined for Battlefield 5. Most Battle Royale modes use some sort of force field to shrink the playing field, but true to the mode's name, there is a literal firestorm coming in on your players. So if you stick around in one spot for too long, you are going to get burned. It's like my grandma would always say, "If you can't stand the heat, get out of Battlefield 5, you noobs." Grandma. There will also be objectives players can accomplish during a match, which will play out similar to the ones in Conquest mode from Battlefield 1. The mode will have both fixed and random locations for these events, and when completed, they will award you with additional gear to help out. Since this is a Battle Royale mode, it goes without saying this is going to be the largest map ever made for a Battlefield game. So big, in fact, that development of this mode is being led entirely by Criterion Games, creators of the Burnout series. Another new mode is Airborne. In Airborne, the attacking team has to parachute into the battle. If you're defending, you have to take down the enemy planes. This is similar to Day 1 of the Grand Operations mode. DICE and EA ran a couple of closed alphas for Battlefield 5 with modes like Conquest and a condensed version of the Grand Operations mode. The alphas were also used to test some of the basic stuff like matchmaking and team lobbies. They learned a lot from these closed alphas and rolled some of the stuff they learned into the open beta that ran from September 6th to September 11th of 2018. The open beta included 2 maps, Arctic Fjord and Rotterdam. It also included the fan-favorite Conquest mode as well as an early look at the part of the Grand Operations mode. The open beta also included the first live event, the Shock Troops Chapter event. Players who were able to complete the event were awarded a Tides of War beta dog tag that will carry over into the main game when it launches. When the open beta finally arrived, it was met with mixed emotions. Some players feel it's everything they ever wanted from this sequel, while others feel it's different from Battlefield they know and love. Must be the no random bullet deviation they're experiencing with the gunplay. Some people claim the new user interface from the beta had a clean look to it, keeping in line with past Battlefield games. However, some say it's too simplistic and doesn't convey enough information. DICE has commented it's improving the UI and game experience. In the open beta, you had to back out all the way to the main menu to customize your guns. You could change your weapon mid-game, but you couldn't change out their parts or anything. DICE confirmed they are looking at solutions to do this while on server. Plenty of gameplay mechanics in the beta are classic Battlefield. For instance, when a player is down but not quite dead yet, they can hold out for a fellow soldier to revive you, or you can just choose to bite the bullet for a quicker respawn time if there's no teammates around. Make no mistake, the beta adds plenty of changes too. One new feature is called Squad Revives. They allow any squad members to revive another squad member even if they're not a medic class, but to balance it out, they made it so medics can revive teammates faster than the others. Regardless, it adds a lot more cooperation to the game. DICE has also tweaked how marking enemies works. Previously, when you'd mark an enemy, it would also reveal and track their location for a brief moment, making it much harder to get away. In Battlefield 5, it'll only mark the last known location and will stop tracking once your line of sight is lost. One weird bug that players reported during the beta would cause players to be suddenly unable to continue playing their round. When switching between soldiers, classes, or spawn locations, players were finding themselves unable to make a selection. Instead, they'd get the error message, "Deploy point no longer available," as if the spawn points were full, even when they weren't. But this was a beta. It's a test, and this has been resolved for launch, says DICE. They've also added new Killstreak Rewards for you and your teammates. Your squad will all earn points that are added to a team total. At any point when you have enough points, your squad leader can spend those points and gain power-ups like missile strikes and tanks. The medic now has a limited amount of medkits instead of their usual bottomless supply of heals. Medics can get more kits around the map at certain restocking stations though, so go yourself. It's not like you have to make them last the entire round. Battlefield veterans that played the beta have claimed that getting used to the controls was a very smooth and easy process, that each of the classes feels the way they should. Aside from the regular weapons and vehicles, DICE has also announced that players will be able to, quote, unleash the secret weapons of World War II, which has some people speculating that there's going to be a World War II version of the secret weapon DLC from Battlefield 1942. There'll be plenty of ground vehicles to choose from, including several kinds of tanks like the Tiger 1 or the Valentine tank, and there's also going to be smaller vehicles like trucks trucks and jeeps to get you across the map. There are lots of aircraft to choose from Battlefield 5 as well, like the Spitfire, a British single-seat fighter plane, or the de Havilland Mosquito, which required 2 people to control in real life, 1 to pilot and 1 to navigate. If you find yourself without ammo, you can always use a melee weapon. With your trusty axe, scout knife, or cricket bat, you'll never be completely unarmed. Players will also have access to several gadgets to help them get out of sticky situations, like a sticky dynamite or anti-tank mine for traps, or a garrote for the more stealthy approach. Besides your standard frag grenade, there's also a fire grenade and a smoke grenade. Players also have the ability to throw grenades back at an enemy or even shoot them out of the air if they're quick enough or lucky enough. There are lots of era-appropriate weapons to pick from in Battlefield 5. There's submachine guns like the Thompson and the MP40, as well as a variety of pistols, rifles, and machine guns. There's also some specialty weapons like cannons and anti-tank guns. The map Arctic Fjord takes place during the German occupation of Norway that occurred in 1940. The Germans needed to take over the country for their natural resources. Rotterdam is a medieval city that is under siege by the German invaders. The battle this map is based on also occurred in 1940 in May. The German invaders were up against the Dutch military, who proved to be far more difficult than the Germans anticipated. I guess nobody expects the Dutch. Devastation is a map that's basically a sequel to Rotterdam. Where Rotterdam takes place right as the battle begins, Devastation takes place in the aftermath of the initial attacks. DICE is using this map to show off the realistic destruction effects like dynamic cracking and crumbling of structures. The Twisted Steel map is set in France during Germany's initial attack. The signature aspect of this map is the foliage, as open marshes and dense patches of trees are all around the playfield. The amount of detail in the ground alone is really cool to look at, with all the empty shell casings and whatnot scattered all over. Hamada is a map inspired by a strategic point that's between Libya and Egypt, and it was the scene of several crucial battles that took place between 1941 and 42. Alright, we know what guns you can use and where you can use them, but what about how you use them? Well, in Battlefield 5, they've removed visual recoil on your weapons, which means that where you aim is where you shoot. Each gun now has a unique recoil pattern that players can learn and account for. Bipods make a return for your weapons, bipods being a 2-legged attachment for guns that add stability. In Battlefield 5, they're apparently going to be easier to set up. Different materials in the game can now be shot through depending on what they're made of, how thick the object is, and what weapon you have. If it's thin wood, sheet metal, or a wall, lower caliber weapons can possibly break through. Bigger guns will be able to shoot through thicker stuff as well. Snipers no longer have a sweet spot mechanic for their distance from a target. Snipers used to be able to get a max damage boost when at a specific distance, but that is now gone for Battlefield 5. Being shot at doesn't have an effect on your aim anymore. Before, it would make your gun's aim wiggle around due to aggressive suppression effects, but this has been removed. The ammo for vehicle weapons like tank cannons and mounted guns no longer automatically replenishes, which means you'll have to go back to resupply stations and reload if you run out. These resupply stations can be found at bases or near objectives. Aircraft have a finite amount of ammo as well. However, you won't have to land your plane each time you run out of ammo. Instead, you'll just have to fly through a resupply area marked in the sky. You can bring any vehicle to a resupply station for repairs as well. You'll want to be sure to not get your reinforcements too beat up because you're not sure if you'll be able to replace them if you don't have enough resources. While the fortification tools are normally used to improve the security of your base, the tanker and pilot class can repair vehicles and aircrafts as well. You don't have to be a mechanic to fix whatever your particular mode of transportation is. Like in the previous Battlefield games, you'll be able to repair vehicles from the inside if you have the right class. So don't worry about making yourself vulnerable to gunshots while patching your tank up. Also, aircraft can be repaired while in the air, in case you need to make a hasty fix in the middle of combat. Some vehicles now have the ability to tow certain objects around the map, meaning you can move turrets and anti-aircraft weapons to where they're really needed. While towing a weapon, another player has the ability to hop onto said weapon and use it, even while driving. This opens up a whole bunch of strategy options and help make these structures a little easier to defend. The physics of the player's movement are somewhat more realistic now. Instead of just coming to a stop where you run to a wall, your character can now interact with whatever they've collided with, meaning they'll put their weight into walls and doors when you collide. This also means you'll potentially even stumble over something, so watch your feet. You can now jump through closed windows, breaking them and vaulting in one go. Your character's walk will be visually affected by whatever environment they're in, like mud, tall grass, or a body of water. It won't have an effect on gameplay though, so don't worry about getting stuck in said mud. There's been more directional control added to the game, so you can now dive in any direction. The dive will have a cooldown, so people won't be able to spam it, and you can also shoot while diving, although there will be a substantial accuracy penalty applied when you do so. The players used to have one of two reactions to explosions. They died, or they didn't. But now if you're close enough to be hit by an explosion, but not close enough to be killed, you'll either be knocked down or knocked back from the explosion. When you're down and waiting for a teammate to give you medical attention, eventually, a supporting teammate can opt to drag you away if there's too many enemies on your tail. Once you're in a safe location, you can then be healed in hopefully a calmer environment. This feature will be coming in later, post-launch. One change that's a little more subtle that adds more cohesion to the experience has to do with the character Ragdoll physics. It used to be that the Ragdoll physics were processed on the console side, meaning each player would see a person Ragdoll differently. Now the Ragdoll physics are processed server side, so the same Ragdolling is shown to everyone playing on the server. Whether you're Ragdolling your opponent or getting Ragdoll yourself, Battlefield 5 still uses EA's slick Frostbite engine. New and improved animations have been brought to your melee weapons as well, so swinging blunt objects around has never looked so good. When spawning, you'll start off with fewer supplies than in past games, which will force you to work with your teammates better to share resources between each other, as well as using those resupply stations. You'll also be able to gather supplies from defeated enemies. Your health still has the ability to regenerate, but not all the way to 100% in one sitting anymore. Now your health bar has a sort of checkpoints every 30 points of health. When your health regenerates, it only does so to the nearest checkpoint. A specific assault combat role allows you to regain up to 40 points of health though. The world now has a procedural system for handling the effects of explosions and gunfire on the environment. Instead of a static environment with pre-rendered destruction, debris realistically falls from damaged areas. When an explosion occurs indoors, it will make debris fly outward from the building. Likewise, if there's an explosion on the outside of the building, it has the potential to cause it to crumble in on itself. Squads are teams of 4 now instead of 5, which means it's a little easier to find a full team of people. It also means fewer people to keep track of and work together with. Also, you'll be able to keep your squad after a match ends and go into another session together. If you don't have a squad going into a multiplayer game, then you'll be automatically assigned to a squad, so don't worry. If you don't have any friends playing Battlefield, you'll have the opportunity to make new friends. The spawn system in Battlefield works on a ticketing system, so if you want to revive after you die, you'll have to spend one of your squad's tickets. If your squad is out of tickets, you can't revive. You'll want to keep an eye on your tickets because every class on a squad plays an important role. The Assault class is your bread and butter class, an all-around soldier that has pretty balanced stats. This is the class that is usually used to push forward and capture points. What the Medic class is best at is probably pretty self-explanatory, but I'll explain it anyways. The Medic has the ability to heal other players faster than anyone else, and they can also hold their own in combat when needed, which shine best as a support role. But no one does support quite like the Support class. They can resupply their team with much needed ammo kits. They're also best at base fortification with the ability to build and repair faster than the other classes, as well as adding mounted weapons to bases. Recon is a class that tends to stick to the outer edge of the map. They use their sniping abilities to take out enemies from afar, and they're also equipped with gadgets that allow them to gather intel on the enemy that they can share with the team. Just like how DICE used the beta to gather intel on how to improve the experience. When the Battlefield 5 open beta launched, one of the stranger things people complained about was the censorship of certain words within the in-game chat. Words like DLC, EAT, and Titanfall would be censored when typed into the chat. EA responded that they were looking into the problem and would be fine-tuning the chat's filter. After the open beta ended, DICE team announced a number of issues they were aware of and would be addressing. Things like matchmaking, vehicles, and progression will all have balancing worked on. Even though many of the mentioned modes are multiplayer, they will still have cutscenes and voiceovers, creating a cinematic experience that can be enjoyed by multiple people at the same time. It looks like there won't be a second open beta between now and release, which is unfortunate for anyone who wasn't able to get in on the fun before, but cross your fingers because that doesn't mean that they won't, just that it's not currently planned. Anyone who pre-orders Battlefield 5 at participating retailers is getting the Firestorm Ranger Set, which, unlike what the name would suggest, is usable in every mode, not just Firestorm. The set comes with goggles, light battle fatigues, and the Mark III Elite Combat Dagger. When the beta released, some players were worried that all of the maps would be as small as the ones in the beta. The developers responded online and confirmed that larger maps were coming in the final game. The Hamada map in particular is just shy of being a mile long, and Firestorm will feature Battlefield's largest map ever. After hearing feedback from the beta, DICE decided to go back in and alter or even remove some of the cosmetic items that weren't as authentic to the time period. Things like some of the crazier face paints and outfits will be made to be more era appropriate. In the beta, players had something called spawn protection, which was a period of invulnerability after respawn. Some players were not a fan of this since it messed with balancing. They'll be happy to know that DICE confirmed they'll be removing it for the final game. One downside in the beta was the fact that the user interface would sometimes be hard to read and blend in with the levels. DICE listened and programmed the user interface to dynamically change shades, so they'll always be visible against whatever part of the level you're facing. Another change that's been announced to be in the final game is that you'll be spawning with a little more ammo and a health bag. On top of that, some resupply stations are being reworked since many players complained about the scarcity of resources. Battlefield 5 was originally going to be released on October 19th, but it was delayed to November 20th. DICE will be using that time to make more adjustments to the balancing and fully implement the feedback they received from the beta. And also gives us time that maybe there'll be another beta? Maybe. A vocal group of people on the internet got angry about Battlefield's 5 prominent inclusion of female soldiers. This group complained that it was completely historically inaccurate. DICE has responded to these complaints saying they don't regret adding playable women to the game and in fact only regret not putting them into the series sooner. A big addition to Battlefield 5 is the ability to use ray tracing to make some of the most realistic lighting and reflections effects seen in a video game ever. DICE gave an incredibly impressive demonstration at the NVIDIA Gaming Celebration in Germany. They've gone on to say that since that presentation that they've had to dial back the ray tracing effects for performance reasons, but it still looks impressive. The new ray tracing technology won't be usable by everyone though, as it requires a new NVIDIA graphics card that has ray tracing capabilities built in. This is the first commercially available ray tracing processor on the market, with only one computer animation studio like Pixar and DreamWorks using them to render movies in the past. When DICE announced that Battlefield 5 wouldn't have a premium pass and would instead be giving away all their content for free, they turned around and retroactively did the same thing for Battlefield 1. Between September 11th and 18th, players who owned Battlefield 1 could go into the in-game shop and download the Premium Pass DLC for free. Near Point A on the Arctic Fjord map, there's a peculiar Easter egg hidden in the snow. If you look around, you can find a prompt to build something. Once built, and it takes a while, you'll have successfully made a snowman, carrot nose and all. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but there are rumors that one of the war stories from the single-player campaign might follow a German soldier. The campaign titled The Last Tiger had a teaser image released that has what looks like a German officer behind the wheel of a German Tiger tank. Battlefield 5 is going to have lots of video options and effects that you'll have control over. Things as simple as field of view to film grain and lens distortion will be fully customizable. For this new Battlefield game, DICE didn't have the option to just build onto the weapons system of the previous installation. Large chunks of the logic and code for the weapons mechanics had to be rewritten, with things like how the accuracy and getting hurt works being overhauled. After benchmark testing on both an Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, the conclusion was that both versions kind of look the same in terms of graphics. The Xbox version though does have a consistently higher pixel count than the PlayStation 4, but when all the details are fully loaded in, you can hardly tell the difference. In an unfortunate coincidence, the day that the open beta was first available, September 4th, was the same day that an Xbox Live major shortage and issues for thousands of users was happening. Some were unable to log into their Xbox Live accounts and therefore couldn't play the beta until later. Fortunately, everything got fixed and people eventually got to play the demo. So here's to hoping for smooth sailing on Battlefield 5's release day.
And that's all for now. I'm Alpha Lance, and thanks for watching 107 Facts about Battlefield 5. Did we miss anything that you know? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to be part of the notification squad. And if you're not too shell-shocked about Battlefield Facts, go watch our 107 Facts about Battlefield 1. And if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to The Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.